All right, so you've been researching cigar inspectors, right? Sent me some interesting stuff from RoleCatcher. I gotta say, not what I expected.
Yeah, it's definitely not all, lounging around in a haze of cigar smoke.
Right. My first thought was, wait, get paid to just hang out with cigars all day. But these guides you sent, those paint a different picture. This is serious stuff.
It really is. We're talking like a vital role in quality control. A cigar inspector, their whole job is making sure every single cigar lives up to like crazy high standards.
Yeah.
And that starts with really looking them over.
Okay, so break it down for me. What are we really talking about here? What are these inspectors like actually on the lookout for?
Okay, so imagine this. You've got a cigar that's about to be, enjoyed by someone who expects a certain level of, well, quality.
Mm.
Any little imperfection, even tiny, it can throw the whole experience off.
You're saying like even a tiny crack or the color's a bit off, that matters.
Oh, absolutely. A trained cigar inspector, they're spotting things most people wouldn't even see. Little cracks, tiny holes, discoloration, all that. They're checking the weight, how dense it is, making sure it's consistent. It all affects how the cigar burns, how it tastes.
Wow, it's kind of wild how much detail goes into something like this. Almost like becoming a connoisseur of like imperfections, you know?
Exactly. And it goes beyond just like looking at it. A good cigar inspector, they understand the tobacco itself.
What do you mean?
Well, they need to know just by looking, by smelling
Uh-huh.
the different types of tobacco, how the leaves were treated, cured, fermented, even how long it was aged. All of that goes into the final flavor, how it smells when you smoke it.
Right.
A good inspector can tell if a cigar has Ligero, that's a really strong tobacco leaf, using the filler to give it a real kick.
No way, that's incredible. So you need like a deep knowledge of tobacco to really nail this job. What else? What other kind of expertise are we talking?
Here's a big one. Being able to spot fake cigars. Counterfeits. It's a huge issue in the industry, and these inspectors are like, I don't know, the detectives of the cigar world.
Counterfeit cigars. Didn't even know that was a thing. What's the big deal? Can't they just, I don't know, make a fake that's just as good?
Not really. The counterfeiters, they often cut corners, right? Use cheap tobacco, the curing process is all wrong. Sometimes they even put in, like, additives that aren't safe. So it's not just a bad smoke.
Mm-hmm.
It could actually be dangerous for someone who doesn't know any better.
Wow, that's eye-opening. So what kind of training goes into spotting these fakes?
Oh, it's extensive. They have to pick up on the tiniest differences, like the wrapper leaf, that's the outer layer. They'll spot inconsistencies there in the packing, the labels, everything. They study how it's made, where the tobacco is from, even down to like how the bands and boxes are printed. Seriously specialized stuff.
This is way more than I thought it was. We're not talking about just like kicking back and lighting up, are we?
No, no, not at all. It takes real attention to detail, like serious focus, plus a deep, deep understanding of tobacco, where it comes from, and being able to see the tiniest little things that are off. Oh, and tons of paperwork.
Paperwork. Guess that means like every single inspection has to be written up, huh?
You got it. Every single cigar, they make a record. Any little defect, anything not quite right, it's all got to be documented. Keeps the quality high, helps them track where any problems are coming from. Essential stuff.
So it's not enough to like have a refined palate. You need to be organized, a good communicator too.
100%. And here's another thing that surprised me. RoleCatcher mentions needing physical stamina.
Physical stamina. Wait, what's so physically demanding about checking out cigars?
Apparently, you're handling a ton of cigars. Constantly, like examining, sorting, writing everything down. It can be really tiring. Who knew? Plus, there's the pressure of getting it all done on time without letting those standards slip.
It's a lot more demanding than it looks from the outside. Okay, so we've established this isn't a walk in the park. But come on, what's the good part? Besides, you know, working with cigars.
Well, RoleCatcher says the pay's pretty great,
Hmm.
and there's potential for travel, which is always a perk.
Okay, now that's what I'm talking about. Travel opportunities. Tell me more about that.
Picture this. You're a cigar inspector, and your job takes you to, like, the best tobacco regions in the world. Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, places where cigar making is, like, in their blood. You'd be visiting the plantations, meeting the farmers, seeing the whole process from, like, literal seed to cigar. You'd be like a crash course in, cigar culture.
Wow, that actually sounds amazing. So you're part of this like unique world, fascinating industry, but you also get to travel, immerse yourself in all these different cultures. That's wild. But let's be real for a second. We've talked about the travel, which is awesome. But what about like the career itself? Is it just one kind of job? Or can you actually, I don't know, move up in the world of cigar inspection?
That's a great question. And actually, the RoleCatcher guides, they lay out a pretty clear path for someone starting out as an inspector.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about that.
So pretty standard, right? You start at the bottom, entry level. As an entry-level cigar inspector, you're mostly doing that hands-on work, visually inspecting, looking for problems, sorting the cigars by quality, helping out the more experienced inspectors. Lots of learning on the job.
So it's really about like developing your eye, getting familiar with everything.
Exactly. You're training your fences, learning all the tobacco types, what to look for. But as you get better, more experience, you can move up, become a junior cigar inspector.
Okay, so what's different about being a junior cigar inspector? More responsibility.
Yeah, definitely. You're not just spotting problems, you're like documenting everything really thoroughly.
Mm.
You're working with the production team to figure out solutions, maybe even training new inspectors. It's a bigger role,
Sounds like you need some serious people skills as you move up.
for sure. And for the real cigar fanatics, the ones who really love this stuff, RoleCatcher says you can even become a senior cigar inspector.
Okay, now we're talking. What does a senior cigar inspector even do? Sounds kinda official.
It is. Think of it as like the top dog of quality control.
Mm.
They're overseeing the whole inspection process. They create the quality programs, refine them, that kind of thing, looking at all the data, trying to find any patterns, problems that keep popping up. And they work with everyone, all the other departments, to make sure those standards are met every step of the way.
So it's a mix, right? You still got those hands-on skills, but then also understanding those systems, even a bit of management in there.
You got it. You're mentoring the junior inspectors, sharing your wisdom, making big decisions that affect like the whole operation.
It's wild how something like inspecting cigars actually involves so many different skills.
It really does. And, that's where some of those, I don't know, random skills you pick up in life, they could come in handy.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, remember we were talking about like difficult customers being a potential downside.
Yeah, I mean, even in the world of fancy cigars, I'm sure you get a grumpy customer now and then. What's that got to do with inspecting cigars, though?
True. A senior inspector, they're not usually the ones dealing with customers directly.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to handle those tough conversations, knowing how to smooth things over, that can be super helpful. Like when you have to explain a quality issue to the production manager, or you need to fight for a change in how they're doing things.
So it's all about, like, diplomacy, being a clear communicator no matter who you're talking to.
That's it. RoleCatcher really emphasizes that strong communication is crucial your whole career as a cigar inspector. You're always talking to someone, production, quality control, the suppliers. You got to explain things clearly so everyone's on the same page. In person, in writing, all of it.
Makes sense. Especially when, one little misunderstanding could cause a big problem down the line. But listen, we've talked a lot about the good stuff, the travel, moving up in the ranks. Shouldn't we, address the elephant in the room?
What elephant's that?
The health risks. I mean, we can't ignore that. Working with tobacco, it might sound glamorous, but at the end of the day, it's still exposure to nicotine, other stuff that could be harmful.
You're absolutely right to point that out. It's a big factor. Can't just sweep it under the rug. Good that you're thinking about that.
So did these RoleCatcher guides, do they say anything about that?
They do, yeah. They're upfront about it. Exposure to secondhand smoke, that's listed as a drawback. Potential health risks, too.
Well, at least they're honest. It's
Ah.
definitely something to consider, especially if you have any, health conditions already.
No question. You got to weigh the risks and benefits, right?
Yeah,
Talk to your doctor. Do your research. Make sure you're making the right choice for you.
totally agree. Okay, I feel like we got a bit serious there for a minute. Back to the fun stuff. We've covered the skills, the challenges, even the health aspects. What about just the pure, coolness factor? What are some of the most enjoyable parts of being a cigar inspector?
For a lot of people, it's the chance to be part of something bigger, something
Yeah.
with history, tradition, real craftsmanship. Cigars have been around forever, so being part of that, keeping it alive, that can be really fulfilling.
It's like you're a guardian of tradition, a connoisseur of, a bygone era.
Exactly. And the deeper you get into it, the more you appreciate how many skill goes into making these things. It's not just, oh, I know this tobacco, that tobacco. You're learning these subtle flavors, how different blends work together, how cigars from different places, they all have their own personality.
You're basically like a sommelier of cigars.
That's a great way to put it. It's all about discovery, using your senses. Perfect for someone with a refined palate, someone who loves to learn. And then, of course, there's that travel like we talked about.
Right. Jet setting off to the Dominican Republic, Nicaragua. Seeing those plantations, that's an adventure in itself.
Imagine you're standing in a tobacco field, sun beating down, the smell of the earth, and you realize You're seeing the very beginning of something that people all over the world, they enjoy.
That's incredible. So we've gone from smoke-filled room to like sun-drenched tobacco fields. Sounds like being a cigar inspector is anything but boring.
Definitely not.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it, from those like super detailed inspections to, like you said, sun-drenched tobacco fields. Who knew cigar inspectors had such a, I don't know, a cool job?
It really shows you that there's always more to something than you think, right?
Mhm.
Even something, well, as seemingly simple as a cigar.
For sure. And before we wrap this up, gotta ask you one more thing. Kind of philosophical, but I think it gets at what makes this job so interesting.
Shoot.
So at its core, a cigar inspector, they're not just checking a product, right? They're almost like guardians of quality, making sure every cigar is as good as it can be.
That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
Upholding tradition, preserving a level of craftsmanship that's honestly getting kind of rare these days.
Right. In a world of like mass-produced everything, there's something really cool about that dedication to getting it right.
Totally. It's about appreciating those finer things, the stuff you slow down and savor.
And that brings us back to like the senses. You can't do this job with just a checklist. You got to see, smell, feel all those tiny differences that make a cigar truly great.
Exactly. You develop this refined palate, a sharp eye. You're training your senses to pick up on the artistry, how complex it all is.
Almost like becoming an artist yourself, in a way.
I can see that. You're attuned to details most people would completely miss.
And that's what's so fascinating to me about cigar inspectors. It's this unique combo, right?
Yeah.
Sensory skills, knowing the technical stuff, and then this appreciation for history, for doing things right.
It reminds you that there's always something new to learn, new experiences out there. You just got to know where to look.
Well said. So, to anyone listening, if you've ever thought about, making your love of cigars into a job, I hope this gave you a better idea of what it takes. It's tough, for sure, but also incredibly rewarding.
And hey, even if you're not going to become a cigar inspector, hopefully this made you appreciate that craftsmanship a little bit more.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Now, before you all run out and buy humidors, remember, being a cigar inspector, it's more than just enjoying a good smoke. It's about that commitment to quality, that passion. And who knows, maybe at IS, the perfect career path through.
Maybe.
There you have it, a peek into the world of cigar inspection. We covered the skills, the challenges, even the unexpected perks. Now, here's something to think about. If you were a cigar inspector, what kind of unique test would you invent to make sure only the best cigars get your seal of approval? Think about it. And until next time, happy exploring.